Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Imperial Beach is cleaning house.
They obviously don't want homeless people in their city.
The new ordinance banning people from camping on city streets, why some believe it criminalizes homelessness. Plus, world leaders are gathering with climate change at the forefront of the conversation. How did President Trump address the controversial topic? And a changing climate has millions on the move across the globe. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's September 23rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Priya Sridhar. A South Bay city is making a move to clean up its neighborhoods, and they're doing it by banning people from sleeping on city streets. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more on the new ordinance now in place in Imperial Beach.
We need a regional approach to this issue, and Imperial Beach needs to be a good partner in that. And this isn't being a good partner.
Homeless advocates like Michael McConnell say Imperial Beach prohibiting people from sleeping on sidewalks and city property is telling.
They obviously don't want homeless people in their city.
Imperial Beach City Manager Andy Hall says that's not true.
We don't have a lot of homeless here, but we don't chase them off. We don't give them a bus ticket. We don't just try to chase them out of town. We do try to find them shelter.
But Hall does say the city has seen an increase in trash and human waste from people who are homeless.
We're really trying to balance the ability to keep the community safe and sanitary, while at the same time being compassionate with the homeless.
The most recent Time and Count report found just 12 people who are homeless in IB. McConnell says the city should be helping them instead of trying to move the problem elsewhere.
Imperial Beach can't disconnect themselves from the region, and in the region, there's 8,000 to 10,000 homeless people. And so you can either be a good partner, but you can't hide from this issue.
Homelessness was not mentioned in the actual ordinance, but it was discussed before it was approved. City officials say they will not be using the law to crack down on the homeless.
I don't think that we would ever get involved with someone sleeping. That's not the issue. What we have really been challenged with lately is the accumulation of debris.
Before the ordinance was passed, IB already prohibited people from sleeping in parks and beaches. The city might be opening itself up to lawsuits. It says it will deal with them when or if they come. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Suicides and fentanyl overdose deaths are up in San Diego County. The medical examiner's office released the 2018 numbers today. More than 22,000 people died in the county last year. Data shows the number of accidental overdose deaths from fentanyl has tripled since 2016. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid 100 times more potent than morphine, according to the CDC. Suicides also increased 13%. The number of measles cases in the U.S. remains the same for the second week in a row. So far this year, 1,241 cases have been confirmed in 31 states, including 2 cases right here in San Diego. The majority of those were among people who weren't vaccinated. More than 75% of cases were linked to outbreaks in New York. San Clemente High School is formally apologizing to the Lincoln High community following racist remarks made by some of the students. During a Friday night football game earlier this month at San Clemente High, Lincoln High students complained of racial taunting. Today, the principal of San Clemente issued a statement saying in part, quote, "We extend our deepest apologies and do not tolerate racist or hateful rhetoric." He also said students from San Clemente and Lincoln will participate in a one-day workshop to address bias and bullying. As the world's leaders gather in New York for the annual UN General Assembly, the climate crisis took center stage. Dozens of heads of state made their pledges and proposed their ideas for the environment while in the nation's capital. Protesters also voiced their concerns. Karen Kafa has details from Washington.
President Trump was expected to skip a UN summit on climate change entirely, but decided to make a brief appearance.
I'm a big believer in clean air and clean water, and all countries should get together and do that, and they should do it for themselves.
Trump had a session on religious freedom scheduled to overlap, but attended for about 15 minutes. The climate summit speakers invited to come with firm proposals for change.
From the beginning, I said the ticket to entry is not a beautiful speech, but concrete action.
Angela Merkel, for example, pledged to double Germany's climate protection funding.
Internationally, we shall increase our funding for global climate protection from 2 to 4 billion euros.
The summit comes on the heels of Friday's youth climate strike held worldwide. 16-year-old activist Greta Thunberg told leaders Monday to take the crisis more seriously.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you.
French President Emmanuel Macron said young voices like Thunberg should be encouraged.
We need our young people in our countries to tell us to work faster. We need the young people to help us to change things.
Elsewhere in the nation's capital Monday morning, climate activists brought rush hour traffic to a standstill to bring attention to the climate cause. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa, KPBS News.
Climate change often impacts some of the world's most vulnerable people. As part of our ongoing coverage of San Diego's climate crisis, I took a look at how people around the world are becoming climate refugees.
My children, the oldest is 22.
Hussein Hay Noor came to the United States from Somalia more than 3 decades ago to study as a foreign military exchange student. After completing his training, Noor said he felt unsafe returning to his home country because of the ongoing civil war. He applied and was granted asylum here in the U.S.
The country was in a political turmoil, and when Siad Barre left the country, people were divided so badly.
Since resettling in San Diego, Noor has helped dozens of families from East Africa make a new home in San Diego, which has one of the largest populations of Somali refugees in the world. While Somalia has been suffering from civil war and political turmoil for decades, experts say drought, which causes food insecurity, has been a main driver of mass migration throughout the region. For generations, people in Noor's family have supported themselves through farming. But in recent years, drought has forced them off their farms and into refugee camps in Kenya and Ethiopia.
They rely on the rain, and if they miss one season of that rain, it's going to be devastating, and the food and water would be scarce.
Ramla Saeed is the director of the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, a nonprofit dedicated to refugee rights. She's also seen the impacts climate change has had on migration.
So what's happening, and what I know that people tell us, is they leave their rural communities in search of food, in search of water during droughts that are recurrent. And so with limited resources and people's land rights being threatened, obviously you'll see a lot more conflict as well that kind of exasperates already highly volatile, violent. What is already happening is violence and persecution, and then the climate crisis exasperates that.
According to a recent study, Somalia is the most vulnerable country in the world to climate change. The United Nations says the drought in Somalia has caused 49,000 people to leave their homes in search of food and water so far this year. Noor says that he's seen many able-bodied men in East Africa joined armed factions simply to survive.
Many people run away from their homes to seek help, to find food and water. Many youths, they are attracted by the armed functions like Al-Shabaab or warring functions. And this climate change also boosted the tension between the clans.
Worldwide, studies show more than 17 million people have been displaced because of weather-related disasters like droughts, wildfires, and extreme temperatures.
The whole issue of people getting displaced due to climate change or becoming a climate refugee has become a lot more real.
Ram Ramanathan is a climate sustainability professor at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
Probably in about 10 to 15 years, that's going to be the biggest problem we're going to face. Refugees, migration, the social unrest that would cause if we don't have a governance system. Very few, particularly our political leaders, are aware of this, that this is going to be the biggest problem very soon. I don't see anyone talking about this.
Noor says for too long, climate change has taken a back seat to other issues.
The international community and the local government didn't do much and didn't give much attention about the climate change. They focused on war on terrorism and the piracy. But this is really a pattern and a new issue that's affecting people's lives in East Africa.
He hopes politicians and policymakers will wake up to the reality before it's too late.
And for more stories like this, please visit our climate change desk at kpbs.org. Students from high schools across San Diego are getting involved in the migrant crisis. As KPBS's Max Rivlin-Nadler shows us, for many students, the realities of international migration struck particularly close to home.
We need to be known, we need to stay on top, we need to have power.
Camila Trujillo is a freshman at San Diego High School. On Friday, she represented the fictional country of Malil during a diplomatic crisis.
People have been saying that we should pressure them.
The simulation was put together by the United States Diplomacy Center and had students working together as fictional countries involved in the migration crisis to propose possible resolutions. Like many students in San Diego, Trujillo is no stranger to the stresses that borders and migration can place on a family.
My mom couldn't go to her father's funeral because she wasn't legally documented, so that hurt her a lot, and I just really felt bad, so I wanted to help out.
The simulation was moderated by former U.S. Ambassador to Paraguay, Leslie Bassett. It centered on a refugee crisis created when a religious minority was persecuted and displaced from the fictional country of Gilbia.
And this opportunity for these students is to look at not just sort of sitting on the sidelines, but look at actively engaging to try and make positive change and looking at the complexity, because it is a complex art. And it is not something that you will normally solve in a 2-hour conversation.
And we would like the UN and Sudan to understand that Gilbia is open to negotiations between the three of us so that we can protect the refugees that are already in Gilbia.
Ultimately, students came up with a variety of solutions to the crisis. Just as in the real world, none of the proposals offered a tidy resolution for migrants caught between borders. Trujillo, who has co-founded a club centered on cross-border diplomacy, wants to put her newly tested diplomatic skills to use in the real world, especially along the San Diego-Tijuana border.
It's not a simulation. It affects real people. It affects people like me, and it affects many others. And I just want to stop that. That's why I keep on building bridges.
Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
The California legislature passed some landmark housing bills in 2019, including new protections for renters. But the fate of a major bill to tackle the state's housing shortage will be decided next year. SB 50 would require cities to allow denser and taller apartment buildings in areas near public transit, good jobs, and good schools. It was put on hold by another state senator earlier this year. Senate President Pro Tem Toni Atkins told KPBS today the bill will come back and that she'll take a more active role in amending it.
You know, when you do really important pieces of work, sometimes it's contentious and sometimes it's hard, as we've seen on any number of issues. I'm committed to Senator Wiener and working on SB 50.
Governor Gavin Newsom has pledged to get 3.5 million homes built in California by 2025, but the state is nowhere near meeting that goal. In fact, home building is down this year compared to last year. Dirty air affects us all, but for pregnant women, the impact is far greater even to the womb. KPBS's Chris Underwood explains the findings of a new study.
There's new evidence that the air a pregnant woman breathes in could affect the fetus, according to a study published in the journal Nature Communications. Researchers found that when pregnant women breathe in black carbon pollution, harmful particles can make their way from the lungs to the placenta and could potentially reach the fetus. Dirty air could then cause health problems once a child is born. Black carbon pollution is created by the combustion of fossil fuels, which can come from cars or power plants. The small study examined the placentas from 25 non-smoking mothers immediately after they gave birth. Researchers say the more black carbon the women were exposed to during pregnancy, the more the pollutant was found in the placenta. The study cautions that more research is needed to show whether once inside the placenta, the pollutant particles can reach the fetus directly. But researchers say the results prove that placentas aren't an impenetrable barrier. For KPBS News, I'm Chris Underwood.
Say goodbye to summer, it's officially fall. The autumn equinox began today. This is the midpoint between the longest and shortest days of the year. It's the moment when the sun is directly over the equator and the earth gets nearly the same amount of daylight and darkness. Even though fall is here, it still may feel summer-like for a little longer. According to experts, the U.S. will have warmer than normal temperatures for part of the fall. Now to meteorologist Jeff Cornish for a look at our weather week ahead.
We do have some concerns associated with the Santa Ana winds that will be increasing tonight into Tuesday. Fire danger will be peaking during that time frame tonight into Tuesday. But on the more positive note, there will actually be some scattered showers sneaking into some parts of Southern California on Wednesday night into Thursday. So there are some changes brewing. Satellite radar shows there's a lot of moisture not too far away. In fact, there's one report over 5 inches of rain in a part of central Arizona. They've had some flash flooding there. Some of that moisture can be loosely tied to a few of the recent Pacific tropical systems that have passed off to the south, like Lorena. Now, you can see that we're highlighting areas mainly northwest of the city with the greatest risk of fire danger tonight into Tuesday and tapering off Wednesday morning. Gusty offshore winds, low humidity. We obviously have dry vegetation this time of the year, and it is running warm. Tonight, partly cloudy. We're on track for a low of 62 degrees. Elsewhere, we'll get down to around 49 at Mount Laguna on the first official complete night of the fall season in the Northern Hemisphere. We still have moisture tomorrow from Phoenix east. All that's east of this area of upper level low pressure. Because we're on the dry side, there is an offshore wind, and it will be warm and blustery, breezy out there, I should say. Futurecast will introduce a little bit of rain shower activity, maybe a little drizzle here and there by Wednesday evening in some spots. So tomorrow still hot, still dry, 92 at El Cajon. Mount Laguna 70, but 98 degrees into Borrego Springs. And the coastal forecast some low clouds on Thursday, maybe a little spot of drizzle or mist for a few folks. And we'll be into the mid-70s into Friday and Saturday. In the inland areas, most of us will be staying dry, but again, there's a small chance Wednesday night for a little bit of drizzle or a few sprinkles to break out. Will be cooler, a cooling trend into the mountains as well, into the mid and upper 60s, even low 60s Thursday, with a chance for a stray afternoon shower or storm. Deserts fall into the 80s. That's progress. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
Football, mild weather, the glorious change in leaves. There's so much to love about the fall. But millions of people with allergies tell a very different story. So how can allergy sufferers find relief from their symptoms? Holly Furfer has more in tonight's Health Minute.
Ann Corbett loves the fall. Walking, hiking, camping, and tailgating.
Sometimes that's been really tough because of my allergies, because just standing outside can make them happen.
Since her teens, year-round allergies slowed her down. In fall, a major culprit, ragweed. In addition, mold spores can often be found on fallen leaves, and as a result,
it's very common for people who have year-round allergies to have worsening of their symptoms during the fall as well as spring.
Dr. Alan Redding tells patients there are some steps they can take that can help, including buying HEPA air filters, using a saline nasal spray, avoiding raking or bagging leaves if they have a sensitivity to mold, or using a mask. And
if they need to work outdoors or spend significant amounts of time outdoors, it's best that they do that later in the day.
Redding says these tips may help with mild symptoms, but see a board-certified allergist if symptoms are more severe, like in Ann's case. She started on allergy shots almost 2 years ago. The immunotherapy works by gradually reducing a person's sensitivity to their allergens.
The shots have been life-changing.
She can now enjoy all that the season has to offer. For today's Health Minute, I'm Holly Furfer.
More time in front of a screen does not always equal bad grades. That's according to a new study JAMA Pediatrics published today. Researchers studied screen time versus academic success when it came to 106,000 children and teens. They found that overall, one is not associated with the other. They also compared the amount of time spent on the internet or mobile phones to watching television or video games. Researchers say kids and teens who spent more time watching TV and playing video games did poorer academically. Nearly 500,000 people in San Diego County are over the age of 65. That number is expected to double in the next 10 years. Sharp Memorial Hospital is preparing for this aging population with the development of a new geriatric trauma program. KPBS reporter Ebony Monet sat down with the hospital's director of trauma, Dr. Diane Wines.
So tell us about this new geriatric trauma program.
Sharp Memorial decided to look at the statistics for San Diego County. From 1990 until the year 2020, which is just next year, the population will have gone up by 150% for the geriatric patients age 65 and older. And we recognized that on our trauma program, we were seeing more and more geriatric patients who really were very active people prior to their injury patterns. Just to give you some rough numbers, we see about 70 to 90 geriatric patients per month, and we admit around 60 to 70 of them. And so our teams developed a task force that ran over 8 months during 2018 to develop this program. We took expertise from physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists, respiratory therapists, and together we developed this very patient-centric program that we now have.
So recovering from trauma can be a long road for anyone. Why would seniors in this population need specialized care?
Well, I'll give you an example. We started this program based on one patient, a test patient. He didn't know that he was getting this very specialized treatment plan because we hadn't even developed the program yet. But he was 89 and he was working on the gutter that runs along the roof of his home. His wife was holding the ladder. She heard the phone ringing, so she ran inside to get the phone as he was coming down the ladder. And towards the very bottom, he had a trip and fall off from height and put his arms out to sort of brace the fall and broke both wrists. We did double sessions of PT, OT every day. His wife learned the techniques. Then we enforced his sleep hygiene. Very strict, lights on, lights off. Nighttime medications to enable sleep that are more natural, like Ramelton or melatonin, are great adjuncts to the care. He got multiple sessions of just the daily activities, practice with that because he was right-handed. And he needed to practice how to do these activities with sort of minimal movements, minimal weight in the hands, and we got him home in 4 days.
Wow. Why now? Why is this a good time here in San Diego County to develop such a program?
We're going to see the numbers increasing. It's not a right now problem. It's going, we're going to get there. You know, if we're all lucky enough, we will get into that age group at some point in our lifetime. And we want the care to be such that we know that we can maintain independence as long as possible.
Dr. Diane Wentz, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Apparently, this is the best week to buy a house. Here's how it breaks down. In the spring and summer, buyers with school-aged children are anxious to move and get settled before the school year starts. Many people who haven't bought a home by mid-September typically put the move off. According to Realtor.com, the last week in September is expected to offer some of the most ideal buying conditions of the year. The site says at this time of the year, nearly 6% of homes on the market have had a price reduction.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump admits that he asked the leader of Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Well, a new Brad Pitt film hit theaters this weekend, but does it deliver? KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando has this review of Pitt's interstellar film Ad Astra.
Ad Astra imagines a near future where corporations and the military have merely extended their reach into the galaxy. Brad Pitt's Roy McBride is an astronaut with special insight into the Lima project.
First manned expedition to the outer solar system, sir. Some 29 years ago.
And the commander was?
He was my father, sir.
Ad Astra wants to be a paranoid existential thriller for our times, but it feels more like a pretentious reimagining of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness as an emo father-son drama. It's gorgeous to look at, with Pitt's gracefully aging face and a magnificently rendered galaxy to swoon over. But it's emotionally hollow and ultimately disappointing. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.